Good morning. Ayin Beis, volume 3. We are on page 1368. We finished the paragraph on 1368, where we're learning about Mishnah in contrast to Mikra. Mikra is the written Torah, the verses that originate in Chabad of Atzilus, which is higher than comprehension and revelation, and therefore, where does it manifest? The Nehi of Chabad, which manifests in the world of Asiya, Mikra Basiya. By contrast, Mishnah originates in Chagas of Atzilus, and because Chagas is already a revelation and relates to existence, so there we don't need the Nehi of Chagas. It's Chagas, the Etzem of Chagas radiates, and where does that manifest? In a higher world, the world of Yetzirah. And thus Mishnah explains the details that in Mikra you only get the story, or you get just the basic mitzvah, the basic point, without the details and without the explanation. That's essentially what we learned. So though we have Mishnah also in this world in Asiya, so he concluded at the end of the paragraph that we learned yesterday that, however, the Gili of Mishnah, the words he used, Ha'arav is Galashal Mishnah, it's revelation, Sheshoshem, that's rooted in Chagas of Atzilus, it radiates Bizgalus only in the world of Yetzirah. So though we have it in a world of Asiya, but it's on a lower level, and he gave the example of learning Mishnah in this world compared to learning Mishnah in Gan Eden, which is the world of Yetzirah. There's also Gan Eden, Elyon, and Bria, but here he's talking about Yetzirah. He also compared it, I'll just go back in the summary, to the difference between Moshe and Eliyahu. Eliyahu comes to every bris, he's called Malach HaBris, and wherever there's a shliach, whatever matter, Eliyahu is the one that is accessed. Why? Because Eliyahu is the chitzenius of Ma. Moshe is the primius of Ma within Ma. Eliyahu is the chitzenius of Ma. And we said the chitzenius of a higher level goes further down. And therefore Eliyahu is the one that goes into all these different and serving as an ambassador, as a shliach, as a messenger. And this is also the difference in Torah and mitzvahs, that mitzvahs which are rooted in the Golgalta, in the Keser of Keser, so its external expression goes down further down into Asiya. That's why a mitzvah is action-based. And that's an equalizer. Everybody does a mitzvah equally. Torah, on the other hand, is Chachma of Keser. So that's already a Gili, and the Torah, therefore, comes into a state of revelation. And there's differences between one person and another in how their understanding of Torah. And that's the difference between Mikra and Mishnah. Mikra is like mitzvahs, like Eliyahu, and Mishnah in this example is like Moshe or Torah in this comparison. Or the difference between Golgalta, the skull, and Moicha, the mind, where Moicha is more like Mishnah and Golgalta is more like the Mikra. It doesn't say it's exactly that level, because these are all examples just to explain the concept of something that's more atzmi, and only its outer dimension gets revealed and goes not lower down, and something that's more revelation, and that itself can be revealed, but it doesn't go that low down, it goes into a higher world. So with that, we'll continue now on page 1368, and the Rebbe Rashab is going to continue the discussion of Mishnah. Now, as I mentioned, this is all based, that we've learned, based, and not only based, it's actually the language. In many places, it's word for word from the Maimer called Inya Mikra Mishnah V'Talmud, which is printed, which is a Maimer that the Alter Rebbe said, Yisrei Tov Kuf Ayin, and it's printed. I gave already the sources, Hanoches Harap, Pinchas Harap, but this Maimer is here, the Tzemach Tzedek, citing that Maimer with additions. And clearly the Rebbe Rashab is quoting some of the Tzemach Tzedek's additions. That's how you can know that it's not just the Maimer of Anochas Harap, it's also with the additions of the Tzemach Tzedek. Okay. But now the next section continuous Mishnah, but this is the Rebbe Rashab is now bringing from other places of Chassidus. So he's going beyond that mimer that I just cited from the Alter Rebbe. So now he says, Vehine, new paragraph on page 1368. The pages can be found at ayinbeis.com, the PDF version. Vehine, Bezeh, Bereshis, Daf Chav Zayin, Amid Beis. Now, in Zeyar, and now Zeyar, Bereshis, page 27b, Chav Zayin, Amid Beis, Isa, Mishnah, Isasa, Dahu Nar. Mishnah is the spouse, the partner, the Isha of Ahunar, of that young man, which is a level in Kabbalah referring to Zah, usually. But it's called Nar. The Ahunar, the Ihi, and what is this level called? Shivcha the Shechina. Shivcha, the maidservant of the Shechina. That's what the Zayar says. So the Rebbe Rashab is now going to use this Zayar to further explain what we learned about Mishnah. So essentially, Mishnah is a partner to Ahud Nar. We don't yet know what that level is. He just makes that statement, and is the maidservant of the Shechina. That's Mishnah. But Inyan, what's the Inyan in that? What does that mean? He says, Dihini Keser nikra Atik. Keser is called Atik. Now, of course, he means the higher level of Keser, but sometimes when you speak about Keser, you talk about the general Keser is called Atik. Atik is a verse in the book of Daniel, where he says, in the vision, there he says, the Atik Yosef al Kursaya. So literally, Atik means the aged of years, the elderly one. Atik is old, Yemen is days. So talking about that aged one or that elderly one, Atik Yosef al Kursaya. He sits on the throne. And here's where the question goes. And his garments are white like snow. And the head and the hair on his head is pure like wool. This is an expression in Daniel that's brought very often in Kabbalah and Chassidus to explain what Atik Yemen is. All these levels we talked about, the white hair, the difference between the garments that are like snow and the hair that is like wool. But it's not. But the point is, the Atik Yemen is what the focus here is. Pirish Atik Zokon. Atik means Zokon, an elderly one, an aged one. That's Atik. Why is he called Zokon? When we say someone is Zokon, elderly, like an elderly sage, is because of his Gadlus, not just his age. Should read it properly. So when we say Zoyer, remember Zoyer Ampin? Zoyer means small, cotton. Arich Ampin means long. So the difference in Atik is Atik is an aged one compared to a young person. What does that signify? If we remember, Mutfa Murgish Muskel, Ibr Yanika Meichen the Katnus, Meichen the Gadlus, basically less mature, more mature. So we're talking about a higher level of revelation. That's why it's called Zokan. Like Zokan Shesha Kana Chachma. Hadras Pnei Zokan, you're supposed to rise for a person who's an elderly person, because the elderly person carries more life experience and more wisdom and so on. So Zokan refers to Gadlus, a higher level of development, the highest level of development. So that's why it's called Zokan. In this Atik is Melubish Erein Sof Baruch. It manifests in all levels. But no, the full manifestation is apparent in Atik Yemen. Once you go lower than that, the Erein Sof is becoming more diminished and it's becoming more like we speak. Arich Ampin, for example, is called Reishel Netzalim, the head, the beginning of the emanations. Atik is called Tachtei Neshebe Ein Sof, the lowest part of Ein Sof, because it's in that state, it's like a higher state that has that Gadlus, that within it manifests Ein Sof Baruch Hu, and that's why it's a Gadlus, a maturity, an expansiveness, a development, different ways you could translate it. V'yadua, and it's known, the Atik is Pnimis HaKeser. Yeah, like I mentioned before, Atik is the inner dimension of Keser. V'nikra Atik Loshen Zoken, and now he's giving another explanation why it's called Atik Loshen Zoken. Because Atik, they're not capable of saying there's nothing new in Atik. Atik is just an extension of Ein Sof as it begins to manifest in states of the structure of Seder Shtalshus. But it's not a new creation. It's not like Bria. Bria is a creation. Bresha is bara, is something created. So Zoken means aged here, that it's been here for a long time. That's the second meaning in Atik. Chassidus explains Atik has different meanings, but the explanation, like he said, so before he said Zoken, it's at Gadlus. Now it's interconnected. Now he's saying Zoken due to the fact it's not a chiddush. The Ein Sof. Shem b'chinas chiddush min ha'atzmus. You could say the idea of a chiddush, something novel, something new, emanates. You can say that about the Giluyim, things that are revealed, but not about Atik, which is much more connected to the etzem of Ein Sof, of Ein Sof. So by Giluyim Ein Sof, Shehem b'chinas chiddush min ha'atzmus. That's a chiddush from atzmus because it's not reflecting the very core. V'hainu, and he's going to explain now why. Let's see here. Okay, so parentheses are 5 lines. So let's explain why the Giluyim. So now we're talking about Atik as being part of like the etzem or the Pnimis HaKeser. He said it earlier as well in the previous page when he spoke about Pnimis HaKeser, B'chinas Atik, Tainug. So Atik in a sense is giving us a taste of the atzmus of the etzem. Now, the Giluyim refers to the areas that already being revealed and expressing themselves. We'll soon see where exactly it fits in. In some ways, Atik can be compared a bit, I don't want to say to the Helema Atzmi, but definitely to levels that are higher than Giluyim, like Etzem Ha'or and so on higher levels. But here we're talking about Atik of Atzilus, meaning Keser of Atzilus. But there's always the microcosm, macrocosm. Remember, Atik is also, we speak about Atik as higher than Ak. There's a similar level like Atik, Ke'en Atika, al Reish Galgalta of Ak. So, okay, so let's continue here. He's now going to explain why the Giluyim of Ein Sof, there you could say Chiddush. Because those Eiris, the way they transmit is through concealment, through diminishment. Harikod Mamaheder, which means once you're going through a tzimtzum, means that what precedes them is a state where they didn't exist. That's the point of a Gilui. A Gilui means, like for example, let's say the sunlight. Even though it's revealing the sun and it's expressing and manifesting and transmitting sunlight, but it's not the sun. Preceding the light is a state where there was no light before it began to shine. So that means it's a chiddush. So it comes through a tzimtzum means there's some type of step in between. If the air was there all the time and it was just a continued extension of the source, there's no tzimtzum, then you don't call it chiddush. But here you're saying there's some type of transition, which is the tzimtzum, and therefore kodma mahed, what preceded them was a state where they didn't exist. The gamma giluyim shehein shaloi idea tzimtzum. And now he's going further, and also the giluyim that are not subject, that are not through the tzimtzum. Remember, not all the giluyim go through the tzimtzum. By ikar, and where we see that primarily, the level where giluyim don't have a tzimtzum is shaykh zeh be'erein sof shalifnei tzimtzum. So when we talk about tzimtzum, we usually refer to the tzimtzum arishin. So the air that came after the tzimtzum arishin was followed by what preceded it was a concealment. That's what we say. Ayin Ein Sof filled the whole expanse, the Eitz Chaim. Then there was a Tzimtzum that concealed it. Then came the Kav, the ray of light. That ray of light is a Chiddush because it was preceded by the Tzimtzum. Without the Tzimtzum, you wouldn't have a ray of light. But what about the Giluyim that are not subject to Tzimtzum, which is primarily before the Tzimtzum? There we say Ayin Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum. Shari Bagiluyim, including those that are nimshach not through the tzimtzum. They're like they originate from before the tzimtzum, but they're now existing after the tzimtzum. That's the transcendent energy of Sev of Kalam, because we know that the Eir after the tzimtzum there's the Eir Mamala like the Kav, but there's also Sev of Kalam which retains the forces that are before the tzimtzum. But the fact is, it's revealed after the tzimtzum. So there, it's very clear that there's a chiddush, because even Sevu Kalam, even though it's not subject to the tzimtzum, but it was preceded by the siluk, the removal or the total concealment of the tzimtzum of Eid Ein Sof. Like we learned in volume 2, which is a very fundamental mimer about the whole tzimtzum. So therefore, Harihu Gilir Tzeni, that means it's a revelation that comes by will. That means there's a deliberate choice that God makes to reveal that. That means Shekod Mohed. Anything that's a Gilir Tzeni means it's not just a natural extension of something. It means it was deliberately chosen. That means preceding that, there was a moment when there was no Ratzon for it. That's called Mohed. That is preceded by not being. So first it didn't exist, and now it exists. So even though it's rooted before the Tzimtzum, but it manifests after the Tzimtzum. So bottom line is that also the Giluyim, Shein Lo Shalei Adei Tzimtzum, are Kod Mo'aheder. So let me break it down just to make it clear, because there was a parenthesis within a parenthesis. It may have been confusing. I may not have spelled it out properly. Let me spell it out again. So he says like this. We're not talking about Atik now. We're talking about the Giluyim that come afterwards. The Giluyim of Ein Sof are Chiddush from Atzmus. Why? Because they came through a Tzimtzum, which means they were preceded by a state when they didn't exist. And what about the Giluyim that are not at Tzimtzum, which is essentially primarily the Ein Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum? Because that which comes after the Tzimtzum addition, there clearly there's something that is novel and unique and new. Even Sevu Kalamid, because there was a siluk. But what about Ein Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum, which is not subject to the Tzimtzum? Nevertheless, that too did not happen automatically. Ein Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum was also chosen by God. You can't say God must shine light, as we've discussed many times. Light is not a necessity. God wants to shine light. So even though you can't call it the Tzimtzum Arishin, you still say it's a Gilur Tzeni, it's revealed because he wants it to be revealed, which makes them Kod Mohed. Anything that's there by desire, and not just naturally there, means that it was preceded by a state when it wasn't there. So first it wasn't there, then he wanted it to be there. So even the highest levels of Oyer are all basically a Chiddush. That's what he says now. What about Atik, however? Avol b'chinas Atik, she b'chinas Tachteina Sheba'atzmus, like I said before. Atik is called Tachteina Sheba'atzmus. It's only obviously a euphemism in the sense where it's only used as an example. Because we say Tachteina in Atzmus, you don't say Tachten Elyon. You can't say higher or lower. So Chassidus explains, Tachteina means it's the manifestation, but it's a manifestation of Atzmus. So it's not a manifestation of Giluyim. So Atik is a Tachteina Shemina Atzmus. Hagam Shezeu Gam Ken B'chinas Hamshach Mina Atzmus. Even though this too is an extension, it's not Atzmus. It's also an extension from Atzmus. How do you do it? However, here God shows that Atik should not be an extension like like Oyer, which is a revelation, which is so-called not the Etzem. It reveals the Etzem, but it's not the Etzem. The sunlight is not the sun. Here he wants it to be Hatokim in Atzmus. He actually wants to give a taste of Atzmus, and that's why he manifested in a level called Atik. So Atik is also not, you can't say Atik and Atzmus are one, but Atik is Hatokim in Atzmus. And Hatokim means it's like a piece of Atzmus, Kavyochel, so to speak. Shazel Gamken Pirush Atik. That's another Pirush in Atik. Atik means old, aged, like we said before. Another meaning in Atik, Loshen Hatoka. Hatoka means when something is imparted, when something is copied from. Like when we say Hatoka, if in Chassidus we bring that when people with the Rebbe would write a mimer, he would then give it to a Maitik. A Maitik was someone that copied it, literally writing word for word. And Hatoka was a copy. That's what Hatoka means. A copy, like a carbon copy of something. That's different than Oyer. Oyer is a revelation of that thing. Hatoka is a copy of it. So in other words, God essentially made a copy of himself in Atik, meaning the Etzem, the Atzmus. So Hatoka is sefer l'sefer. Like a copy, when we copy from one book to another book. That's called Hatoka. Like it says elsewhere. That's why Atik is also the type Zakon. Zakon means the aged one, meaning he's like been here forever, so to speak. It's only an expression. Obviously, even an aged person, even an older person was born at some point. But aged also means seasoned. It's around, it's been around. You say something is aged. So Zakon here is also emphasizing that's not Mechudesh. So the two interpretations, Atik being Hatoka, like a copy, means it's as if it's been here before. And that's the meaning of Atik. Oyer, you can't say it was here before. There was a stage when it didn't exist. Atik, even though it's coming from Atzmus, but it's coming in a way that's an expression of the Etzem itself. So this is a new idea you probably have not learned. We didn't learn it in Ayin Beis. We did learn about how Etzem gets manifests through Helam Atzmi or through the Yesh. So we'll discuss that more, but right now he's introducing Atik in this context. Now the truth is, again, it's quite dense and short, so I'll elaborate to try to explain it well. But that's so far what he said. I'll stop here for a moment if anybody wants to get any clarity, any questions.
Atik is like heaven on the old expression, heaven on earth.
I would not say that exactly because heaven is Giluyim. Atik is more Etzem.
No, I wasn't saying it literally. I was just saying.
And what's the relationship between Mishnah and Atik?
We're going to see.
Wow.
As he explains it. He's just beginning to develop the idea.
Okay.
The Rebbe Rashab will not leave that for guesswork. He began with that, and now he said, Inyan. He's now going to explain. We'll see. We'll see where he's going with this. An example, just to give it a little more, to make a little more palatable. I'll say the example. Sometimes Chassidus is the example of the difference between a teacher and a student, and a father and a child, a parent and a child. So the teacher does not create, the student is not a copy of the teacher. The student is a self-contained entity, born to other parents, has a mind of his own, but a good student is going to be a reflection of his teacher. The teacher will impart him the giluyim of seichel, but the very seichel, the very brain that he has, is not coming from the teacher. The teacher can shape his mind and can make it grow and develop it and transform it even, but it's not etzem from etzem. It's not it's oyer and moyer like. So the teacher is the mashpia, and the makabel, the student, is the recipient. When it comes to a child is the very genetic material matter from his father. Like he says in Tanya chapter 2, Etzem moyech ha'av, the seed of the father, the egg of the mother, they produce the child, that the child is actually the very brain of the child, was formed from the genes of the parent. Now, the child doesn't mean it's exactly like a parent. It's not necessarily a carbon copy, but it has the DNA, the genes, and the characteristics. So that we call hashpah atzmis. That's not hashpah of giluyim, of that's hashpah atzmis. As a matter of fact, it could be that the child will learn more from a teacher than from his father. It's possible. The father gave him his very being. See, he's like a part. There'll always be etzem, like Atik, hataka from like a hataka, like a copy of. Again, when I say copy, I don't mean carbon copy as a clone. I mean that it's the very matter of the genetic matter of the father has entered into the child. But in the Giluyim, he may receive a lot more from a great teacher that he has. On the other hand, the teacher will never give him the etzem. The teacher will give him seichel, can give him even deeper than seichel, even the deepest levels, but it's still Giluyim. Just as an example, it's not a perfect example, but somewhat, Atik is God giving us a piece of himself. Oir is God giving us a revelation of himself. And that would be the difference between Oir and Atik that he explains. So one is a chidush, the Oir, and the other is not, because it's an extension, at least in some way, of the etzem. Like he says, Atok, and that's why it's called Zok, and it's not chudush, not new. Now, obviously, a new child is new. That's why I say the example isn't perfect. Can't say the child is just a continuation of his parent. But in the aspect of the genes, it's the genes that continue to carry that which was there. Like when we say we're children of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, they have an effect on us. It means there's expectations of us because we're in some way a continuation of we are their children. Mazare b'chaim, afu b'chaim. As the children are alive, they continue the legacy of their parents. That's just a little example to help maybe make it a little more understandable. Okay. V'yesh leimer. So let's continue now. The Bechinas Keser B'chlal, we can say that Keser in general, Nikra Zoken. In general terms, you can call Keser the level of Zoken, the aged one, the sage. Because even though Keser is made up of two parts, Atik and Arech Champin, but Atik manifests in Arech Champin. So they're not disconnected. Atik, Mislabish, gets enclosed within Arech Champin. So it's not like Chochma Bina, which comes after Arich in the 10 spheres, the spheres that are the conscious, the revealed spheres. Keser is one entity made up of Atik and Arich. And since Atik manifests in Arich, you can call Keser in general Zoken. Even though Zoken is reserved primarily for Atik, but he says, Yashlema, you can call Keser in general Zoken. Like it says elsewhere. This is in the Maimorim on Vayihiu Chayesara. So it says Meya Shana, Ve'esim Shana, Ve'sheva Shana. That she lived 127 years. So Chassidus explains that's three categories: Meya, Esrim, and Sheva. She explains. So it's explained elsewhere. Be'inyan Meya Shana, the Misper Meya, the number 100, Hu Ba'arech Champin. That's the level of Arech Champin. V'nemer Shana Loshen Yachid. So we don't say Meya Shanim. Like you say Sheva Shanim, 7 years, you say plural. Why do you say Meya Shana Loshen Yachid? Because the Meya, even though it's 100, but it's all encompassed as one, Mipnei, So there's an expression to kunezeach, that God is one, but not a measurable one. So since an arich manifests Atik, which is oneness, and that utter unity of Atik, so that even though arich already begins the beginning of the structure of the 100 spheres, which is 10 times 10, but it's still what dominates there is the consciousness of oneness. The chad v'lei b'chushbon. So it's meya loshen yachid. 100, like all encompassed in that oneness. U'kamoshn is bar le'il, like we explained earlier, like it was discussed, explained earlier, dibra amaskal elamase. So down below in the footnote, they say that perhaps it should be Reish's Bara from volume 2, because apparently in Elamase discussed. I want to look it up myself anyway, but they give this for volume 2, page 700. Okay. So what do you see from this? What do you see from this?
Your signal's breaking up a little bit. I don't know if it's just me or if it's the whole class, but.
Is it better now? Is it good?
Yeah, somehow after a few seconds it clears up. Yeah, it is better.
Can you hear me? Okay. So we see from this, you can say the Zokan, that element of that sage element, that Atik has the Hataka from Atmos, and that's why it's not Mechudish, not new, but it's an extended divine Etzem. That's why Arich, you can also say in Keser in general, the lame Zokan. So he says like this now. And
I'm sorry, you broke.
So too can we say.
You're breaking up again, and you just said something important.
And the same thing we can say, and so too can we say, remember before in Zokan he gave 2 points. One is we're learning now that it's aged and not new. The first thing he pointed out on top was that it was Gadlus. That was a state of maturity. Zokan as in mature and developed. So you could see that Keser in general, including Arich Ampin, is also called Zokan mitzad b'chinas hagadlus shemelubish by b'chinas Erein Sof. Because Erein Sof manifests in it. Hainu b'chinas tachteina shebamaitzel. Like we said about Atik, that the lower part of the Maidservant, of the emanator, manifests in Atik and also in Arich. That's what you say now. That the word Zokan, you can say by the general Keser, the aspect that it's not new, and also this aspect of Gadlus, of maturity and mature development. Ukamaimer, to bring proof to this, he brings now a proof from Zohar. Erein Sof milagav, kisra ilah milabar. So the Zohar says that Erein Sof on the inside, Gav is the inside, and what is on the outside, milabar, kisra ilah. The supernal Keser is on the outside. So you see that Erein Sof and Keser are essentially 2 parts of one entity. One is the inner, and one is the outer. So what do we know from this? That Keser in general, Atik has an impact on the entire Keser, calling it Zokan, both as in being not new, but a continuation, a copy of Etzem, and also the maturity and Gadlus of the Zokan. That's what we learn now.
Is he saying
the
that
connection clear? Is the connection clear?
It's not great, but it's not great, but we can hear you.
When you say not great, what, it breaks up? What's going on?
Yeah, it breaks up. It's like your words are getting slurred, but you can hear what you're saying. Can you take a question?
Not yet. 1 minute.
Okay.
You're doing a lot of processing, huh?
Yeah, try it's complicated stuff, but yeah, trying. I'm absorbing and processing. How's that?
Let me just see here where the end of the line is. One second. Come with Okay, yeah, we can stop for a question. Go ahead.
Is he implying, or is not saying it? So that's why I say implying or inferring that Keser is like the chitzonius of Atzmus.
I don't know what that means. I can only use the language he's saying here.
Well, he said it's the.
Let's use the words from the mimer.
Well, you said
that meant. I gave the example of a parent and a child. That's the understanding.
No,
of
but
it.
you just quoted the Zohar that the Oren Sof is the Megalo Kisro Tila Milvad. So basically, the Keser is at the back of the Tila. I guess the Atzmus, the higher.
I don't want to quote. I don't want to get caught in semantics here. Do you need the word back? The word outer? I mean, the words I'm using here is an understanding that Keser in Sof, that Keser in general is a manifestation of Ein Sof. The Zohar proves because it says Ein Sof on the inner dimension and Keser on the outer dimension.
Right. Well, you can see how I might think that that's a chitzon. The Keser is a chitzonius of Atzmus.
So, like I copied. That's 1 second. We're talking on top of each other.
Because your signal's bad.
Atik. Okay, so but let me what I'm trying to explain. Okay, so Keser is like Hatoka, a copy of, as in like I gave the example of a child as opposed to a student. So I don't want to get caught in words. Let's talk about understanding. What do you want me to explain there?
Okay, so I'll fine. That's fair enough. The Tachlis question is that I'm having a hard time understanding how if the Keser is a copy, if you will, of Atzmus. It's not a new revelation, but it can't be different than Atzmus, but yet it's not a revelation. So it seems like it's neither.
So did you the example of the child versus a student? Did you hear that example?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's
I understood
the answer to your question. I gave an example to make it more palatable, as I said, that a child is from the very genes of the parent. A student is not. A student is from the giluyim of the parent, of the teacher. So that would be one of the ways to explain that.
Okay, I'll keep absorbing.
Okay, so now we have to deal with this. You say the connection's not good. So how do we deal with that?
It comes in and out. Now it's okay. It's really weird. Now it seems fine. But 30 seconds ago, I could barely hear you. Anyways. Svi, are you hearing it the same way I am, or is the problem on my end?
Yeah, I'm here. It's breaking up a little, but I was able to understand it. Just like missing a word here and there. I mean, maybe I don't know so much that I think I understand it, but I thought I did.
Anyways, I apologize for interrupting. Go ahead, please, Rabbi.
Okay, so I'm going to do one more line and then we'll stop. Now, this Zohar that he just quoted is used and explained in different ways in different Maimarim. So the Rebbe Rashab in his thoroughness is qualifying in the parentheses now that in other places this idea is used sometimes a different way. Here he's using it to prove that Keser in general is including Arich, not just Atik, but also Arich has an element of Zaken, of Atik in it, being all an expression of Ein Sof. There are times we learn, for example, that Keser, Atik is a connection to Ein Sof, Tachtein Sheba Maitzil, And Arich is the beginning of the Natzola. It's not a contradiction because Arich has both elements. That's why he said Bechlolos, Yesh Leimer, Keser Bechlal, because here in this mimer here, in this context, he wants to emphasize how Keser in general is this higher level. So in the parentheses, he qualifies and says, the kan mavur, that's usually the terms used when he's trying to say that in other places may be explained differently. Kan mavur, here in this mimer, it's explained, mavur is this mimer zayar, this zayar about of Ein Sof Milagav, that Ein Sof on within, and Keser without, on the outer dimension, it's explained Alpinas Chochmas Tima. It's referring to where Keser is referring to lower levels in Keser. That Ein Sof is on the inner on this side, and Keser is on the other side. Here he's referring to which part of Keser Chochmas Tima, the Yadua, the Chochmas Tima Sharsha Mepchinas Atik. So he's talking about Keser Chochmas Tima within Arich, that's rooted in Atik, Commission is ill. So therefore, since it's Chochmas Tima, which means superconscious intelligence, so we learned earlier, there's the level as it is in Atik, which is completely sosim be'etzem, fundamentally concealed, can never be revealed. And then there's Chochmas Tima that could be revealed, and ultimately part of that will manifest in Chochma Gluya, in conscious intelligence. But the point he made back in volume 1 was that the two levels of Chochmas Tima speak to each other. There are two parts. One is an Atik, one is an Arich. And as such, it becomes the true interface between the divine and existence, because on one hand, it's still Chochmas Tima, it's beyond consciousness, but it's Chochma, it has some form of manifestation. So he's saying here that when we say Kisra Milabar, that Kesra in the outer dimension, he's talking about Chochmas Tima, which is rooted in Atik, and therefore you can say on Keser, the concept of Zokan, that it's not new, that it's a sage, and as a matter, it works well, because Zokan is connected to sagacity, which is wisdom that the aged person has, even though he didn't spill it out, but it's Gadlus Hamechin. Gadlus as a maturity, a full developed state, that's what Zokan is referring to. That's what he said here in this parenthesis. Now the next section, I'm going to stop here for today. The next section, he's going to start now explaining that as a result of this, Kesed has an element that is beyond judgments and severities and beyond change. Remember, a davar chadash, something that's new, is subject to change. Something that's an extension of what was there before. The age, the zakan, that's not mechudesh, is not subject to change, because it's an extension of an eternal space, an eternal dimension. So now he's going to discuss what that means, and this is going to take us all the way to understanding what means nar. Remember, the Zohar said that Mishnah is the spouse, is the partner of nar. Nar is the opposite of zakan. Nar is a young person. When you say nar, you're talking about a young man. Zaken is an age person. So with understanding what is Zaken Keser, he's going to then bring us back to Nar and bring us back to Mishnah. That's the context of where he's going to be going with this. But he's still, developing it further. And we'll continue on Sunday from here. So I'm going to stop here after the parentheses around 3/4 of the way down on page 1368. Any other questions?
Not that it's necessary, but this is kind of an interesting proof that the oral Torah is, Mahar Sinai, that it's not of man creation. But
well, we don't know if he's referring to the oral Torah here. We don't know yet.
Well, Well, Mishnah is, the oral law. It's just,
Yeah, but who says Mishnah is the level of Keser?
okay, I hear you. Seems like he's leading
This
that
is
way a
called
little bit.
jumping the gun, and
Yeah.
let's not speculate or jump. So it'll all be understood as we develop it further.
Yeah.
Remember, Mishnah is rooted in Chagas, not in Keser.
Right. Yeah, he's referring to the Mishnah as the Nar, so we have to understand the relationship between Nar and Zaken. I get it.
Okay, so we're going to stop here.